For 70 years, the Bermuda Triangle has been synonymous with mystery. Ships vanished without distress calls. Aircraft disappeared from radar in clear weather. Rescue teams found nothing, no wreckage, no bodies, no explanation. The official story has always been environmental factors. Unpredictable weather, human error, magnetic anomalies that confuse navigation instruments. Tragic but explainable. But in 2001, a deep-sea survey team working off the coast of Cuba found something on the seafloor that does not fit any of those explanations. Something that has been sitting at a depth of 700 meters for potentially thousands of years. Something that, when the footage was released, divided scientists, archaeologists, and geologists into camps that still cannot agree on what they are looking at. What you are about to see has been analyzed, debated, and dismissed by mainstream science. But the evidence, the sonar data, the remotely operated vehicle footage, the measurements, is too clear to ignore and too strange to easily explain. Before we dive into what was actually found down there, subscribe and share this video, because what you are about to discover is something powerful that institutions would prefer stayed buried at the bottom of the ocean. And the more people who know about this, the harder it becomes to dismiss. Let's talk about what's really at the bottom of the Bermuda Triangle. The Bermuda Triangle, the roughly triangular area between Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico, has been the subject of speculation since the 1950s. Dozens of ships and aircraft have been lost in the region. Some had no distress signals. Some sent final transmissions that cut off mid-sentence. The most famous cases include Flight 19, 5 Navy torpedo bombers that vanished in 1945, the USS Cyclops, a Navy cargo ship that disappeared with 306 men in 1918, and numerous commercial vessels and private aircraft that simply stopped responding and were never found. For decades, theories ranged from magnetic anomalies to methane gas eruptions to time warps. The region became synonymous with the paranormal. But scientists have consistently argued there is nothing unusual about the Bermuda Triangle. It is a heavily trafficked area with unpredictable weather. The Gulf Stream creates sudden storms. The seabed has deep trenches where wreckage sinks beyond recovery depth. Statistical analysis shows disappearance rates are no higher than other busy maritime regions. The mystery, according to science, was a myth. Until 2001, Paulina Zalitsky and her husband Paul Weinsweig, marine engineers running a Canadian company called Advanced Digital Communications, were contracted by the Cuban government to survey the ocean floor off Cuba's western coast. Their mission was to locate Spanish colonial shipwrecks for potential treasure recovery. Cuba has territorial waters over numerous historically documented wreck sites. The government wanted modern sonar mapping to identify promising targets. ADC deployed their research vessel Ulysses with side-scan sonar equipment capable of mapping the seafloor at depths up to 2,000 meters. This was standard commercial survey work. Routine, boring even. Their sonar detected something at a depth of 700 meters, about 20 kilometers off the Guanahaca-Bibis Peninsula on Cuba's western tip. The sonar returns showed geometric patterns, straight lines, right angles, repeating shapes with consistent spacing, bright reflections indicating smooth, hard surfaces. At first, the crew assumed it was instrument noise or geological features being misinterpreted. Sonar can create artifacts, false images from signal reflections or interference. But when they ran multiple passes from different angles, the patterns remained consistent. The shapes did not move. They showed shadowing, darker areas behind bright returns, suggesting objects with height and mass, casting acoustic shadows. That is when Zalitsky and Weinsweig realized they might be looking at something that could rewrite everything we know about ancient history. Sonar imaging provides data, not photographs. It shows where sound waves reflect back strongly on hard surfaces versus weakly on soft sediment. Interpreting those returns requires experience and careful analysis. What the ADC sonar showed at the Cuban site were clusters of large rectangular shapes. Some appeared to be 2 to 3 meters high. Others showed dimensions of 10 to 15 meters in length. They were arranged in linear formations, some parallel, some perpendicular, creating grid-like patterns. The formations covered an area of several square kilometers, not random scattering. not the chaotic jumble you would expect from rock slides or debris. Organized, structured, the team ran verification protocols. They adjusted sonar frequencies. They approached from multiple directions. They compared the returns to known geological features in the database. Nothing matched. Natural limestone formations in the region do not create these kinds of patterns. Coral does not grow at 700 meters depth. There is no sunlight for photosynthesis. Sediment does not settle into geometric grids. Whatever was down there had mass, density, and shape that did not fit natural explanations. To verify what sonar suggested, ADC deployed a remotely operated vehicle, a ROV, an underwater robot equipped with cameras and lights. At 700 meters depth, there is no natural light. The pressure is approximately 70 atmospheres, enough to crush anything not specifically engineered to withstand it. The ROV descended slowly, its lights cutting through absolute darkness. The camera feed transmitted back to the Ulysses showed sediment, occasional fish, the typical barren landscape of the deep ocean floor. And then the lights hit something massive, a flat surface, smooth, not rounded by water erosion, not irregular like natural rock, flat, with edges. The ROV moved closer. The surface appeared to be stone, gray, dense, with a texture that looked cut or finished, not the porous limestone common to the region. Something harder, possibly granite or basalt. The camera panned. More blocks, large ones, some the size of cars, some larger. They were arranged in lines, parallel to each other, separated by consistent gaps. Some blocks appeared stacked, one on top of another, creating structures with height. Others lay in sequences that looked almost like walls or foundations. The footage ran for several hours. The ROV examined multiple sections of the site, documenting different formations. And throughout, the pattern held. These were massive stone blocks, arranged with apparent intentionality, sitting at 700 meters depth on the ocean floor. When Zalitsky and Weinsweig presented their findings to marine geologists, the response was immediate skepticism. Geologists examined the sonar data and footage. Their first assessment was that these were natural formations. They pointed to limestone bedrock that fractured along stress lines, creating rectangular shapes. They suggested basalt columns from ancient volcanic activity. They noted sedimentary layering that could mimic construction. But Zalitsky countered with specifics. The blocks appeared to be granite, not native to the region. Limestone is the dominant geology around Cuba. Granite would have to be transported, which implies either glacial movement, which is impossible at that latitude, or human activity. The surfaces were too smooth. Natural fracturing creates rough edges. Weathering by water creates rounded features. These blocks showed flat faces and sharp corners, inconsistent with millions of years of erosion. And the arrangement was the biggest problem. Geology does not create grids. It does not align blocks in parallel rows. It does not stack rectangular shapes with consistent spacing. The geologist's response was simple. We need more data. The footage is not comprehensive enough. The lighting creates shadows that can be misinterpreted as structure. Without physical samples, actual rock cores from the blocks, any conclusion is premature, which raises the question advanced digital communications could not answer. If these are natural formations, why do they look so artificial? And if they are artificial, who built them and when? 700 meters of depth is significant. Not because it is particularly deep by ocean standards. There are trenches over 11,000 meters deep, but because of what submergence at that depth implies. If these structures were built on land, they had to have been above sea level when constructed, which means one of three possibilities. The land subsided. Earthquakes, landslides, or tectonic movement dropped an entire section of coastline, 700 meters. That would be catastrophic geological change. It would require massive displacement events, far larger than any recorded in the region's known history. Sea levels rose 700 meters. That did not happen in recorded human history. The most recent major sea level rise was at the end of the last ice age, approximately 12,000 years ago, when glacial melt raised oceans by about 120 meters. That is nowhere near 700 meters. The structures are tens of thousands of years old. They could have been built during the ice age when sea levels were lower, and then submerged as glaciers melted. That timeline places construction 10,000 or more years ago, before any known civilization with stoneworking capabilities existed in the Americas. All three options create problems for conventional archaeology and geology. Subsidence of that scale would have left geological evidence throughout the region. There is none. Sea level rise of 700 meters would have submerged vast areas globally. It did not happen. And Ice Age construction requires rewriting the timeline of human civilization in the Western Hemisphere. So, researchers are left with an impossible choice. They must either accept that current geological models are wrong, accept that archaeological timelines are wrong, or accept that the formations are natural, despite looking artificial. None of those options are comfortable. When Advanced Digital Communications released their findings in 2001, the response was immediate and divided. Mainstream archaeologists dismissed it as misidentification. Dr. Robert Ballard, the oceanographer who found the Titanic, stated that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and sonar returns are not sufficient. Alternative history researchers embraced the material as proof of lost civilizations. Atlantis theories resurged. Claims of ancient advanced cultures suppressed by mainstream academia proliferated. And the Cuban government, which had contracted Advanced Digital Communications for the survey, went quiet. No follow-up expeditions were authorized, and no additional funding was provided for investigation. Why? Some researchers suggest political factors. Cuba in 2001 was still under a United States embargo. International collaboration on archaeological projects was limited. Announcing a potentially world-changing discovery on Cuban territory would create diplomatic and academic complications. Others suggest the evidence was not strong enough. If the formations were natural, investing resources in further study would be wasteful. Better to wait for more conclusive data. And some suggest that someone did not want the investigation to continue. If the structures are real and ancient, they contradict too many accepted narratives. Better to leave them undisturbed than risk rewriting history. As of 2024, the Cuban underwater formations remain exactly where they were found in 2001, 700 meters down, undisturbed, unstudied beyond the initial survey. No follow-up expeditions have been publicly conducted. Advanced Digital Communications attempted to secure funding for additional remotely operated vehicle missions with sampling capabilities, but were unsuccessful. Cuban authorities have not granted permits for independent researchers to investigate. The sonar data and remotely operated vehicle footage exist. They have been analyzed by geologists, archaeologists, and marine engineers. Opinions remain divided. Some maintain they are natural formations, unusual, but explainable through fracturing, layering, and erosion patterns we do not fully understand yet. Others argue that the probability of natural processes creating such organized, geometric patterns at that scale is vanishingly small. That the simplest explanation, human construction, is being rejected not because the evidence does not support it, but because the implications are too disruptive, and the site remains inaccessible. 700 meters is deep enough to require specialized equipment. The costs of mounting a comprehensive archaeological survey at that depth would be enormous. And without institutional support from governments, universities, or funding organizations, private researchers cannot afford it. So, the structures sit in darkness, waiting. Either a geological curiosity that looks uncannily like architecture, or evidence of a civilization we did not know existed, submerged by forces we have not identified. The Bermuda Triangle's reputation is built on things that vanish. Ships, planes, people. They disappear, and we are left with questions and theories, but rarely answers. But the Cuban formations are the opposite. They appeared. They were documented. We have sonar data and video footage. They exist. And somehow, that is even more unsettling. Because things that vanish can be explained away as accidents, misunderstandings, or myths. But things that exist, that are documented, measured, recorded, those demand explanation. And when no explanation fits comfortably within accepted science, we are left with uncomfortable choices. Either our understanding of geology is incomplete, and natural processes can create structures that look designed, or our understanding of human history is incomplete, and civilizations existed far earlier and were far more capable than we believed. Or our understanding of sea level change and tectonic activity is incomplete, and catastrophic events reshaped coastlines in ways we have not accounted for. Every option requires revising something we thought we knew. The footage from 700 meters down does not answer those questions. It just makes them impossible to ignore. Massive stone blocks arranged in grid formations, with smooth faces and sharp edges. They sit in the darkness where they have been for thousands of years or longer, natural or artificial, ancient or impossibly ancient, geology or archaeology. The structures do not care what we call them. They are just there, waiting for someone to prove what they are. 700 meters beneath the Bermuda Triangle, something sits on the seafloor. Stone blocks that look like they were cut and placed deliberately, arranged in patterns that geology cannot easily explain, submerged at a depth that challenges everything we know about ancient sea levels and human civilization timelines. The evidence exists. The sonar data is real. The remotely operated vehicle footage is clear, but the explanation is still being fought over by scientists who cannot agree whether we are looking at nature's most bizarre coincidence or proof that human history is far older and more complex than textbooks admit. What do you think is down there? Natural formations that just happen to look designed, or evidence of a lost civilization that someone does not want us to investigate? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you think this deserves more attention than it is getting, share this video, because the more people asking questions, the harder it becomes for institutions to ignore what is sitting 700 meters down in the darkness. The truth might be buried at the bottom of the ocean, but it does not have to stay hidden forever.